I finally got to play a Roland TD50k. Here are my thoughts. What's up guys, Justin Greenwald here, welcome to 65 Drums. This is the place to keep on top of all things E-drum related, so consider subscribing if you haven't yet. Finally got to sit down and play a Roland TD50k, and I've got to say, it's a big upgrade over the Roland TD30k that I have. This is what happens when you first sit down to play this drum set. The first thing you notice is definitely the ride cymbal and that very large 14-inch snare. The ride cymbal is one of the biggest aspects of this drum set in a positive way, because it's 18 inches across, it absolutely dwarfs everything. It's the largest pad here, obviously. You can silence it by just resting your hand lightly on the cymbal. It senses the static electricity in your hand and it silences it. I just wanted to see if the decay cut out shorter when you were resting your hand on it or when you were choking the cymbal by pinching it. And it was exactly the same both ways. The snare is absolutely huge. And also it's heavier than an acoustic snare, which is kind of weird. But I bumped it with my leg and then I lifted it, and it's a pretty heavy snare pad. It's stainless steel, 14 inches across, and it's got a 3-ply mesh drum head on it. The second thing you notice is that all the toms seem pretty small because that snare pad and the ride cymbal absolutely dwarf everything. Like those, the crash cymbals, they just seem tiny. And the hi-hat's okay because it's 12 inches and you know, there are acoustic 12-inch hi-hats. But the toms especially seem pretty small. This is the exact pad that's on those. This is the same one they used on the Roland TD30k, the PDX 100. Really solid drum pad. I like it a lot, but it is 10 inches across. So what Roland wants you to do is upgrade all the tom pads after you've bought the Roland TD50k. Or just go and buy Roland TD50kV, the flagship version. It's a really solid drum set. Just overall feel, it's just a great drum set. One of the big upgrades of the ride cymbal is that the bell is so much better. Most electronic cymbals, you have to hit the bell zone pretty hard. I personally use the shaft of my stick to hit it, that way you get enough force. It's also a playing technique as well. But with this cymbal, bell zone, it's just a lot more sensitive. And did I mention this has a USB connection, not a 1/4 inch? So you can only use it with the Roland TD50 sound module, which is kind of a shame because this is the most advanced ride cymbal ever made. But at the same time, it's advanced because it's using that USB connection. They can cram more sensors. There's more stuff going on inside of that ride cymbal than just the standard trigger setup that every other electronic drum manufacturer uses. Same thing with the snare drum. There's so many sensors packed into that thing. It can actually sense the static electricity of your hand through the mesh head. I don't know how they're doing that, but it works. It lets you do cross stick a lot easier. You've all had this struggle if you have an electronic drum set not made by Yamaha, where you try to do cross stick and it's just not sensitive and you have to press a little button. It's called X stick. It turns the rim click sound into a cross stick sound because those are two different things. Yamaha gets around this by having a dedicated zone on the rim to just be the cross stick sound, and then the other part of the rim is just rim shot. You know, different companies get around it different ways. There was a time or two when I hit the rim for a rim shot, it actually did the cross stick sound, but that was rare. Let's talk about the mesh drum head. It's different than most mesh drum heads. Like, I have a ton of different brands of mesh drum heads in this basement right here, and I've played different drum sets obviously with other kinds of mesh heads that I don't own. This one has a distinct feel. It's not your standard ultra bouncy mesh drum head. When you let the stick bounce on the drum head on the 2-ply toms versus the 3-ply snare drum, it bounces less times on the snare drum, like an acoustic Mylar head. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it feels exactly like an acoustic drum head, but the bounce is more similar to acoustic than a standard 2-ply. Roland was actually really late to get on this train because there are a ton of different manufacturers that have made 3-ply mesh drum heads, but Roland decided to go 3-ply on the snare because it had the 14-inch diameter. At least that's what a spokeswoman said for a Roland demo that they were doing. I'm hoping eventually they'll just replace all the drum heads with this 3-ply material because it is superior to what they're using right now. By the way, there's only 3 slots for a USB pad on the Roland TD50, leading some people to believe that since there's only 2 different pads that are capable of being plugged in right now, the ride and the snare, some people think that means Roland's gonna come out with a mysterious 3rd pad. I'd be interested to see what that is if they do come out with it. I'm guessing the next Roland flagship will lean more heavily towards just having all USB pads. This is a possibility, I don't know, but obviously Roland is going in that direction. I also read on, I don't remember, I think it was on Facebook, a Facebook electronic drum group, that if you plug the snare directly into your laptop, it recognizes it as a USB device. I don't know how useful that is, but I thought I'd mention it because it sounds cool. Now the drum rack is very similar to the one I have on the Roland TD50k. I like the drum rack because all the wires are fed through the tubes of the rack and they pop out where the drum module would be. So it helps with cable management. You know, cable management, some people don't care at all about it. Some people really love having only cables that are exactly where the pads should be. That way there's nothing dangling. They don't have to tie anything off. So for those of you, yeah, this drum rack is pretty nice. Okay, so let's talk about the drum module now, the sounds. The sounds are definitely a step above the Roland TD30. The funny thing about drum modules is that like every drum module you play has its own tonal style, its own thumbprint. They're all unique. And Roland has a certain style of drum sounds that they always have. And that's very much so with this drum module. This is the way I think about it. When a company is developing a drum module, they're modeling the drum sounds off of what's currently being played, you know, on the radio and what popular albums are out. So if a drum company is making a drum module in the 90s, they're gonna make the drum sound as if it's a 90s drum set. It's all about the mixing, the mastering, how they tune the drums. It sounds more modern than what's in the Roland TD30. While the Roland TD50 seems to be more about the attack of the sound, like the kick drum sounds incredibly punchy. There's a really good metal kick drum sound in this module that I enjoyed playing a lot. Meanwhile, the TD30 seems to be more about the tone of the wood. I don't know if any of this is making sense or if I'm just imagining this, but I like the TD50 style of sounds. They're different from the TD30, they're higher quality, but also just what they were going for, what kind of sound they were creating. And if you don't like the style of sounds on the Roland TD50, no matter how high quality they are, that module might not be for you. As far as sound customization, it's very similar to the Roland TD30 in the fact that you can customize the heck out of the sounds, you know, changing shell depth, mic placement, and all that stuff, room ambience. Now you have even more tools inside of the Roland TD50. So in this drum module, you can also change like how wide the snare strainer is, like how many wires are on that snare strainer. You can change the mic width. You can change cymbal thickness, which I think is a great feature. I wish that was on the Roland TD30 I have. Yeah, there are just little things like that that are changed throughout the drum module. Also, the changes that you make are less drastic. It helps you dial in that exact tone a little more minutely. Now, the problem with this drum module in my mind is the fact that the button placement just doesn't make sense to me. Also, I never even learned where the EQ section was. Like, it was that confusing to me. But anyway, I feel like they could have done something to make it a little bit more logical. That's just my take on it. One thing I do like about this is that there are 3 knobs underneath the screen. And by the way, I wish the screen was a color screen, but you know, that's a nitpicky thing. There are 3 knobs that let you tune the drum really fast, that let you change muffling or snare strainer. I like the fact that they're using knobs there. And they also light up, so you can make them blue or white or red or whatever you want. I love stuff like that. That's why I bought a laptop that has RGB color underneath the keyboard, because I just love that sort of thing. And because it's a Roland flagship, you have a ton of inputs and outputs on the back of it. So you've got all the inputs you would need. You probably wouldn't need to string another drum module onto this. There's also MIDI in and out, USB MIDI. There's XLR outs now, which no other drum module, to my knowledge, in this class has that. So that's a really cool feature that I wish other drum modules had, and they're balanced as well. Nice upgrade over the Roland TD30. Is it worth the extra cash? Because you can buy a used Roland TD30 drum module on eBay right now anywhere from $1,800 to $1,500 if you look hard enough. That's like $700 more to buy a Roland TD50. It's hard for me to say, yes, go buy the TD50, it's so much better. It's hard for me to say that because it's even more expensive than the Pearl Mimic. There are only 2 ride cymbal sounds in the side of this drum module, which I think is incredibly stupid. There's no reason why a plus $2,000 drum module should only have 2 ride cymbal sounds. That's a major no-no. You can't do that, Roland. But they did. Finally, by the way, Roland lets you import samples and layer sounds and crossfade between them. And there are other features I'm not mentioning too. This is a deep drum module. There's a lot to go over, and that's not the point of this video, to go in depth on the drum module. If you take a step back and look at this drum set as a whole and whether or not it's worth buying, I can tell you it is definitely a step up over the Roland TD30k. Roland didn't have to include that ride cymbal and that particular snare with this package. They could have stuck with the snare pad they had on the Roland TD30 and the ride cymbal on the Roland TD30. They could have stuck with that and just given you a better drum module and that's it. But they didn't. They included that snare and that ride cymbal because they knew that would grab people's attention. It's just such a good combination. It's like 4,000, I think it's 4,800 bucks. Let me put it another way. You could buy 2 Alesis Strikes with this drum set. But here's the thing. When you get to this price point, it's not about value for your money anymore. It's about going to the edge, going to the limits of what electronic drum sets are capable of. It's sort of like saying to yourself, well, I don't think the Lamborghini Aventador is really a good value for the money. You know, there are $3,000, $4,000 keyboards. There are $10,000 guitars. It's not about value for your money at that point. It's about the whole experience of playing the drum set and being at the bleeding edge of technology for that particular industry. As far as electronic drum sets go, you're getting the best electronic snare drum, you're getting the best electronic ride cymbal. It's got an all-around nice set of pads that are just small. I wish they were larger, but again, this is the K version. And it's got the best drum module out available right now. Again, the Mimic drum module isn't out yet, so we have to compare those when they're both on the market at the same time. It's definitely an upgrade over the Roland TD30, gotta say that. I've owned it since like 2013, 2012. The Roland TD30k is great, but it doesn't compare to that Roland TD50. But if you got the money for it and you decide to buy it, you'll love it. I know at least one of you has a Roland TD50 or you've played one at a store. What do you guys think about it? It's one of those things where you have to sit down and play it for yourself before you can really know what you're getting into. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I will see you guys in a few.